Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today you're checking out a new Stamina Dragonknight solo PVE build. This is updated for the Scalebreaker DLC. Calling this build Dragon's Fury, and yes, we're back on the solo PVE setup. And this time around we're using some updated skills and some updated gear sets for a very dot-focused, heavy armor Stamina Dragonknight build. As usual, we've got a great balance of survivability, defenses, healing, and damage. So if you're interested in taking your Dragonknight up against world bosses, dungeons, even veteran dungeons if you want, then this is going to be the build for you. As usual, we'll check out these stats, the sets, skills, champion points, and more coming up next. Alright, here we are for the solo STAM DK build. Go ahead and buff up here. Use a potion, and then as usual, I'm not fully min-maxed yet on this build. You can get better stats with things like gold gear and glyphs, max level undaunted, but here's what you can expect as a baseline for the build: about 9.5k max magicka, 19.5k max health, and 31k max stamina. For recoveries, we have a pretty solid 900 magicka recovery, 475 health recovery, and 1400 stamina recovery. For our weapon damage, with major and minor brutality, we're sitting at almost 3200 weapon damage. And then from our sets, we're going to get about an extra 1000, so we're well over 4k weapon damage on this build, which is actually really good for a solo build. Remember, this isn't a pure DPS build. We're spreading some of our power between survivability, defense, and offense. This is a heavy armor build, by the way, 5 pieces of heavy, 2 medium, sitting at about 30k spell resist and 27k physical resist. We've got 64 points into max stamina. Running the Warrior Mundus for that little bit extra weapon damage. You can also swap this for the Serpent if you feel like you need a little bit more stamina sustain. We're running the Lavafoot Supinsaltrus for the food here. That's because we have plenty of health from our sets that we're running, so this gives us very good max stamina and stamina recovery. It's awesome. Love this food. For our potions, we're running the Essence of Weapon Crit. Very important because we are not using a major savagery buff from our skills, so this does give us 10% extra weapon crit, which does make a big difference. It also gives us a nice bit of health back, as well as the stamina. Now you can run just the basic Essence of Stamina if you want, but you'll need to switch around one of your skills to do that. And then as far as our race here, on my STAM DK, I am a Nord. I do like Nord a lot. We get a good bit of max health here, 1000 max health, cold resistance by 2310. That doesn't really make a huge difference. We do get the 1500 max stam, and then when we take damage, we gain 5 ultimate every 10 seconds. As a Dragonknight, ultimate translates to sustain, so this is a very good passive for a STAM DK for sure. And then the rugged passive is awesome as well. This gives us close to that 30k physical and spell resist because we have this extra 4k here from our passives. So I do like the Nord. Orc would be another pretty good choice, I think. So let's jump over to the sets next. We're going to start with our body here, which is going to be 5 pieces of the Warrior's Fury set. And this actually got updated for the Scalebreaker DLC, and I'm very happy that it did because this is a pretty cool set now for PVE solo builds. Let's check out what it does. We've got the max health bonus, we've got max stamina, we've got weapon damage. All these are very good for a stamina build. And then for the 5-piece here, when you take damage, your weapon damage is increased by about 30 for 5 seconds, and it stacks 20 times. Stacks can happen every half second, and once you get to 20 stacks, that's the max. So it won't stack beyond that, but then the duration is doubled. So at max stacks, you're looking at 600 weapon damage, and that's before any of our major, minor brutality modifiers, things like that. So you'll get quite a lot of weapon damage from this set. Now the change for this set is it used to be only procced on critical damage, so it was really just a PvP set and nothing else. But now they changed it so it's when you take any damage. It doesn't have to be crit damage anymore. So this works now in PvE, which is a nice addition. If you don't have this, you can pick it up in Cyrodiil from the bag merchants For AP, you can also buy it on Guild Traders. It's not too hard to find. But you'll want to run 5 heavy body pieces for this. So I'm running chest, waist, hands, legs, and feet. I'm using all max health enchants there, all divines. Remember, we are running the Warrior Mundus, so that's giving us a lot of extra weapon damage there. For our next 5 piece, for our weapons and jewelry, we're going to be using the Deadly Strike set. Deadly Strike gives you 2-piece weapon damage, 3-piece weapon critical, 4-piece weapon damage again, and then for the 5-piece, increases the damage of physical, bleed, poison, and disease damage over time abilities by 14%. So seeing this, you can probably guess this is going to be a pretty heavy dot build. STAM DKs have a lot of poison dots from their class skills, and then we also have physical dots and bleeds that we can get from weapon skills. So this is going to buff every single damage over time ability that we have, letting us do 14% more damage. So it's really good for dot-focused builds. Now this set also comes from Cyrodiil. I believe you can get it from one of the towns there, or you can also pick it up pretty easily on Guild Traders as well. So what I'm using here for my weapons is I do have an infused battle axe on the front bar. Infused because I am actually using a hardening enchant. That's the damage shield enchant. So with some adjustments to our CP, we're getting a 5k damage shield every 5 seconds, which is not bad. And we're going to be pairing that with one of our skills to give us an even bigger damage shield every time we use our axe on the front bar. So infused is probably going to be your best in slot trait for that. And you don't need the axe necessarily. You just want a 2-hander, so a maul would be fine. A sword would be fine as well. An axe is going to be nice for single target boss fights because you do get the extra bleed damage, which is buffed by your Deadly Strike 5-piece. So that is nice. On our back bar, we're using the bow here, and I don't have the best trait yet. I would like to have an infused bow. So once I get the transmute stones, I'm going to change this over to infused with a weapon damage enchant. I think when you gold this out, it's close to 500 weapon damage every 5 seconds, just for using our bow abilities. So a very good way to buff your damage even higher with that weapon damage glyph on the back bar. And then for our jewelry, this is a medium armor set, so it does come in robust, which is good. So I have the necklace and 2 rings, and I'm actually using 2 magicka recovery glyphs here on my STAM DK. That's because I'm using a lot of magicka abilities, which I'll get to in a second. I have 3 to 4 magicka skills that I'm running depending on what the environment is. So this gives me close to 1,000 magicka recovery, which is really good. So I definitely recommend that if you're going to use the skills that I'm using. And then I just have 1 weapon damage on the 3rd one there. Finally, for the monster set, super important on this build, I'm using the Mighty Chuden set. This gives us a good bit of spell and physical resistance, max health, which is a very, very good trait for soloing. And then this also gives us Major Ward and Major Resolve up 100% of the time. Now, why would I do that on a DK? Because DKs obviously have an armor buff. It's here. Spiked armor gives you the same buff for 20 seconds. The reason why I want to use Chuden, though, is I'm already running, like I said, 3 to 4 magic-based skills already. And if I had to run Spiked armor, I just wouldn't be able to cast all the skills that I want to cast that use magicka. So with the Mighty Chuden set, I don't have to refresh that armor buff every 20 seconds, and I can sustain my magicka pool a lot better. So I really like running this on a STAM DK, especially for a solo build where sustain is a lot more important. It makes sense. So I am using 2 medium here. 2 medium is going to be ideal. That will give you a little bit of the medium armor passives. Divines would be the best trait here, and then I'm doing max stamina as the enchants. All right, so I think that covers the gear. Let's jump over to the skills next. Starting on our 2-handed bar, this is our front bar. I'm actually using Soul Splitting Trap as our first skill. This did get changed in the Scalebreaker DLC. It got a massive, massive buff. As far as the damage goes, you can see it's close to 20k now. I'm not even fully buffed with Fury. It'll be well over 20k. It does cost magicka, but it scales with our highest offensive stats now. So that's why the damage is going to be so high even on a stamina build. So this is a 10-second damage over time that is going to be buffed by Deadly Strike as well, since this is being converted to physical damage. I did choose this morph as well because it's AoE. And the amazing thing about this is there is no target cap as far as I can tell. So if you're pulling trash mobs in a dungeon, doesn't matter if you have 5, 10, 15, 20 enemies on you, you can hit them with one soul-splitting trap, and then this 20k dot gets stuck on all of those enemies. So it's a huge amount of damage for just a little bit of magicka. This is great too because it's not taken away from my stamina sustain. I'm actually able to do damage with both pools on this build, which is really nice. So I definitely recommend you check that out this patch on your stamina DK. You can also use the other version, which is going to give you more sustain. I believe that's only a single target. Next up, we've got Brawler. This is just the classic damage shield two-hand ability. It gives us a good bit of cleave damage, but then a 5k damage shield at base. And then this scales up for each enemy that you hit. So you can basically get a 20k plus damage shield just by swinging your axe here. It's kind of what the effect looks like. So I do use this just to stay alive in really intense situations. Remember, we also have that infused damage shield glyph as well, so we can get 20, 25k damage shields on this build, no problem, just by running Brawler and that glyph on the front bar. Then we got Resolving Vigor. This is just kind of an emergency heal. We have one other heal as well on the back bar, but it does a good bit of healing over time. So when your health gets low, make sure you pop a Brawler first, get your damage shield up, and then Vigor will just heal you back to full pretty much on the back end. We've got Venom Claw. This is another damage over time ability, very cheap to cast, and does really, really good poison damage, which again is going to be buffed by Deadly Strike. So that's a 12-second dot, ramps up over time. Next up, you got Barb Trap, and this is kind of a flex spot. For pure kind of single target DPS, I liked Barb Trap when I'm solo. This gives us just tons of physical damage. It's also buffed by Deadly Strike, as well as the Minor Force buff. And then you get some passives because it is a Fighter's Guild ability. So this is really good to run on your front bar. Now, if you're having any issues with staying alive when you're playing solo or sustaining, what I recommend instead is actually going to be Rally this patch. Yes, Rally got changed as well. So Rally will give you weapon damage, which is redundant with one of the other buffs, so you can switch the other buff, which I'll talk about in a minute. But it's now giving us Minor Endurance, which is a pretty good buff. That's 10% stamina recovery for 20 seconds. Then it does give us a burst heal. So Rally is a pretty nice option here in this spot as well. But like I said, for pure single target damage, put Barb Trap there. And then if you are super cheap and you want to save on your potions, you can also slot Expert Hunter in this spot. This gives you the major savagery buff passively, and this way you can just run basic trash pots. So last up for the ultimate, I have Take Flight slotted here on the front bar. It does a decent amount of physical damage, but the reason why I really like this is it is a low-cost ultimate, which helps with sustain on our Dragonknight, which comes through our passives, which we'll get to in a couple minutes. But Take Flight's also really nice just for clearing through trash. Clearing through a dungeon. It does a lot of really solid AoE damage and does a nice stun and knockback as well. So you can put all your dots on, go to a leap, stun everybody, and then the dots are just going to take over and finish them off. So it's a very nice ultimate to have on the front bar, both for damage and for sustain. Back bar now, let's switch over to our bow, and we've got Noxious Breath. This is giving us good poison damage in an AoE, and also giving us that major fracture debuff. That's 50 to 80 physical penetration, which is really good to have. After that, we've got another AoE damage over time. We've got Endless Hail on the back bar. This is doing physical damage in an area effect. Now you can use the other morph here if you want. Arrow Barrage does a lot more physical damage, but it's a shorter duration. I believe it's something like 8 seconds. I just think it's easier to slot Endless Hail here. It fits into a rotation a little bit nicer. Poison Injection, this is single target damage over time. Again, poison here, so it is buffed by Deadly Strike. You're only going to use this, though, on single target fights, though, because it is a single target dot, but it is very strong. So you're going to want to work that into your rotation for any boss fight for sure. And next up, we just have our 2 buffs here. So if I am running Trap on the front bar, that means I need Major Brutality, so I'm going to run Igneous Weapons here on the back bar. This gives Major Sorcery and Major Brutality. It also works with some of our passives to give us the Minor Brutality buff, so it's very good. You can see here just by casting that, I get Major Brutality for 40 seconds, Minor Brutality for 20 seconds. So that is good for that. If you are running Rally, though, instead, you could slot Igneous Shield here instead. That'll give you a nice little damage shield. Gives you Major Mending for when you need that really juicy healing. And so that's what I would run in this position if I'm using Rally on the front. And then last up here, we're going to use Cauterize. And Cauterize is another Magicka ability, but this is actually a heal that scales with our highest offensive stats as well. So it gives us about 5k heal automatically every 5 seconds. So it'll give you a burst heal when you first cast it, and then after that every 5 seconds, so it'll give you 3 more heals. So it is just another really good passive source of healing. You can almost think of it as like a stamina source or crit surge. It's going to heal you underneath while you are proccing your damage shield on the front bar. So in most cases, I don't have to use Vigor at all because Cauterize is doing so much healing every 5 seconds that it's keeping my health topped off. And then for your back bar ultimate, there's many things you could slot here. I like Ballista just for the single target damage. You could also put Standard of Might in this position if you want. I do really like Standard of Might, but the ultimate cost, 250, is a lot. Remember that we do sustain from our ultimate, so it's nice having something that's cheaper to cast. So I like Ballista here on the front bar for when I have a little bit extra ultimate, I'll drop this to kill a boss off, and then I like having my low-cost ultimate take flight on the front bar. And then just quickly, let's take a look at the passives that you want to pick up. In Ardent Flame, definitely pick up all of these. Combustion gives you both Magicka and Stamina Sustain. It works off of the burning and poison status effects. This is really good for just sustaining the build. Warmth gives you a snare, which is kind of nice. You'll proc it with Noxious Breath, for example, so you get an AoE snare, which is kind of good for dealing with big groups of enemies. Searing Heat does increase damage of your claw, your Venom Claw. And then Whirled in Ruin decreases the cost of Stamina Poison abilities, so that does help reduce the cost of Venom Claw, and then Poison Injection, and I believe Noxious Breath as well. So you're getting some good sustain there. So definitely pick up that passive. In Draconic Power, Iron Skin reduces the amount of damage you can block. Very good. Burning Heart, we actually do not use this for the most part because we're not using like spiked armor. Elder Dragon, we do get some bonus health recovery from this though for slotting Leap. And then Scaled Armor gives us bonus spell resistance, which is very good. Earthen Heart, these are some of our best passives that we have. Eternal Mountain, pick this up just for increased duration. But Battle Roar, we talked about this and sustaining on the Dragonknight. Since we are heavy armor builds, sustain, it can be a bit challenging. Battle Roar, this is really what helps. This is why I like slotting Leap on the front bar, because I'm getting that sustain back every time I have my ultimate up through that Battle Roar passive, so it's very nice. Mountain's Blessing, this is what we talked about, getting Major and Minor Brutality on this build, giving us very high weapon damage even for a heavy armor setup. So you'll want to make sure you are using this passive. It's going to proc from any of these skills, but the ones that we probably will be using, like I mentioned, either Igneous Weapons, or if you're using Rally, you're going to want Igneous Shield. So one of these on your back bar, you want to cast every 20 seconds at least, and that's just to proc Minor Brutality for that 10% extra weapon damage. Then Helping Hands, this gives us a little bit of stamina sustain. So when you're on your back bar, you'll be getting about 1,000 stamina back every time you cast that ability. Two-handed, definitely pick up all of these passives in the two-handed skill line. You want those, as well as your bow passives. Pick up all of these as well. Now in medium armor, you don't get benefit from all of these, but you will want to pick up Dexterity for extra weapon crit. Windwalker gives you some stamina recovery and cost reduction, so that is good. Sneak I pretty much never get. Agility you cannot get because you're only running 2 pieces of medium, not 5. But you can get Athletics here, which increases movement speed from sprint, and also gives you some roll dodge cost reduction, which is nice for soloing as well, so don't forget that passive. Make sure you pick up all your heavy armor passives. These are very good for sustain and just health recovery, tankiness. Very good to grab those. Grab all your Fighters Guild passives. I need to pick up more of those as well. And then your racial skills, always pick those up, as well as medicinal use. This gives us a 30% duration on our potions, which is very useful, especially if you're using the Major Savagery potion that we talked about earlier. Let's talk about champion points here. Very important on the solo build. And these have been updated for 810 CP. This is what I would recommend at least. So 28 into Warlord, 21 into Sprinter, 49 in Tenacity. We do a fair bit of heavy attacks here on the front bar, so you can get some good sustain there. 37 into Healthy, why not? 32 Arcanist for that Magicka recovery. It is important on the STAM DK. And then 64 into Mooncalf. 16 into Shadow Ward here, and 23 into Tumbling. In the blue tree here, 27 into Blessed, 16 into Physical Weapon Expert, 31 Master at Arms, 81 into Thaumaturge. Like we mentioned before, tons of dots on this build. Pretty much we're only running dots, so 81 points at least here to buff those by 24%. That's really strong. 20 into Precise Strikes, 39 into Piercing, 56 into Mighty. In the red tree, 66 Ironclad, 49 into Hardy and Elemental Defender, 28 Thick-Skinned, 27 into Quick Recovery, and then 51 into Bastion. I don't think I mentioned this in the sets, but this does actually buff our infused damage shield glyph on the front bar, making that 19% stronger. So that's how we have an over 5k damage shield every 5 seconds. Put some points into Bastion if you have extra points. Just makes it easier to stay alive in really difficult fights. Alright everybody, that's going to wrap it up for the Dragon's Fury solo stamina DK build for the Elder Scrolls Online. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, as always, don't forget to crush that like button for me. It really helps out the channel. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button because I do lots of other ESO build videos, solo builds, PvP builds, guides, and more for the Elder Scrolls Online. And with that being said, I'm just going to leave a solo boss battle here at the end so you can check out the build for yourself and see how it works. It is a lot of fun to play and I've really enjoyed it. Thanks again everybody so much for watching. I appreciate all of you very much and I'll see you around in the next video. Thanks.